So I've been playing Honkai Star Rail a lot recently, and I mean a lot.
Hell no.
In this video, I'll be sharing my biggest mistakes that I made with you, so that you don't have to make the same mistakes. Quick disclaimer, take this video with a grain of salt. I am not telling you what to do, but my goal is to help you make more educated decisions using my own personal experience. This video is targeted towards those who want to push farther into Forgotten Hall and get that sweet, sweet Stellar Jade. At TL40 and above in the game, it takes a lot of resources to level up your characters, and that literally includes everything. When I first hit TL40, I started by using my TB power on maxing out my Suval. I spent days worth of trailblaze power leveling and ascending my character, my light cone, as well as my talents. But that's around when I started to realize that I was actually running out of credits. After thinking about it for a while, I realized that maybe it's not the best idea to start by leveling and maxing out a single character. So let's say you leveled up a character to the max that you could when you were in TL30. At TL40, ascending a character from level 50 to level 60 concludes to about 460 trailblaze power total and 112,000 credits. Now, if you want to level up your light cone next, that totals to about 260 trailblaze power total and 100,000 credits. Now, if you couldn't tell, this is already getting really expensive. If you want to level up your skill, your talent, your ultimate, and your basic attack, leaving you with a total of 400 trailblaze power and 160,000 credits. The special traits cost about 4 blue trace materials and 1 weekly boss material, leaving you with an additional 70 trailblaze power. The total cost will be around 1,190 trailblaze power and 388,000 credits. This is an insane number, and if you were to do the math, let's say you use 180 trailblaze power every single day, that will be nearly 7 days worth of trailblaze power. These numbers are gross overestimations. You do get green and blue XP books when you farm XP books. You get the idea. 1,000 plus trailblaze power to level up a single 4-star character. It is more expensive to level a 5-star character. And this is not even including the small trace trees. And it doesn't include relics either. Okay, so now we know it's really expensive to level up a single character. What does this mean for you? If you want to be able to push farther into Forgotten Hall, you have to start thinking about what characters you want to use. What I did during my TL30s was build a ton of characters. I had leveled up almost all of my characters to level 40 at least, and most of them were level 50. And what did this mean once I got into TL40? I had to start picking and choosing who I needed and wanted to level up. Ideally, you build 2 teams that are strong enough to clear most endgame content so that you can do the Forgotten Hall in the best way possible. And that brings us to our first point. Do not build too many characters. If you do that, you'll be spreading yourself way too thin. I did this when I was TL40, but I actually recommend that you do this when you are TL30 and above. Basically, what you want to do is pick out 8 characters that you want to use to make 2 teams. And this isn't a team building guide, so I'm not going to go too in depth about it, but it's important to pick out a variety of elements and roles for your characters. For example, a basic team layout can be something along the lines of 1 main DPS, 1 sub DPS, a buffer and or a debuffer, and a healer. The reason why you kind of want to balance out the roles and not just spam a bunch of DPS characters is that you need to manage your skill points, and DPS characters tend to use a lot more skill points than other characters. Once you've picked out these 2 teams, you should definitely focus on maxing them out as soon as possible. Once you're done that, you can move on to pre-farming materials for them, so that once you hit TL40, you won't be in a drought for materials and credits. You even have the option of farming for relics, which I'll get into in a little bit. Luckily for you, when you're in TL30, it's still really easy to level up characters and max out their traces. So if you really do need it, it's not a terrible idea to level up maybe 1 or 2 extra characters just to give you that flexibility or to cover that element that you might be weak in. If you want to farm relics in the most efficient way possible at TL30, I recommend that you farm the relics that you can get from World 5 and 6 in the simulated universe. This is the only way to get a guaranteed 5-star relic at TL30. Because of that, you can actually get some endgame pieces that you'll be using for the rest of your account. When it comes to the normal 4-piece sets, because of how many the game gives you, it's quite likely that you'll have the right main stats for your characters, and you can just level them up instead of having to use your trailblaze power to farm for a different set. However, if you do choose to farm relics, it's still an overall upgrade to your account, since you can fodder it into future pieces, or just give it to a different person. And the biggest warning of all is to not overinvest in your characters once you reach TL40. At first that might sound a little bit strange, but a lot of the trace upgrades for your skills are actually pretty small and often barely improve the scaling, usually increasing it by like around 3 to 4%, maybe more if it's a hunt character. But many of the small stat traces are not actually worth upgrading initially, and you shouldn't really be focusing on it right away. You could honestly argue that getting a good set of relics is more worth than getting an extra 2 to 3% increase in some of these traces. As well, you may want to consider things like not leveling auto attacks for certain characters if you don't actually use their auto attacks. For example, this could be March 7th, where you will likely be shielding all of the time and not really using her auto attacks. When it comes to characters like Asta, who are mostly used for buffing your main DPS, you can get away with not leveling her skill and prioritizing the utility skills like the talent and the ultimate, and therefore increasing the attack buff and the speed buff. And once you're done that, and maybe once you're done upgrading your other characters, you can go back and level up her skill. Basically, in conclusion, my word of advice is to be smart about how you level up your characters. In my opinion, you should prioritize ascending your characters and leveling them to 59 or 60, since it might be a while until you can ascend them again. Leveling them to 59 lets you passively gain XP from combat, and ascending and leveling their lycones, of course, the biggest way to increase your stats and overall survivability. From there, you should focus on leveling the most important traits, aka the ones that use the weekly materials, and then the rest of the traces. Some people, again, have argued that leveling up relics can be more valuable than leveling up traces that will give you only a couple percent increased scaling. If you feel that this might be the case, or if your characters don't have good artifacts that you can woefully level up without just cringing in pain, then it might be worth to farm a little bit. Like I said, it is not a waste to level and farm relics because you're gonna be using these for a while. Once you reach TL40, it's going to be a long time until you actually start farming for artifacts and getting a full 5-star set with good substats. Once you've done all of that for your main characters, I highly recommend that you consider pre-farming for TL50 once you get close to it. And this is to prevent a similar bottleneck from happening. If you think pre-farming is kind of boring, which I can agree with, you can alternatively farm relics and build 1 or 2 more characters if you really do need the extra characters. And that way, you can still improve your account without being too inefficient and still having fun. Lastly, although I don't encourage you to spend your money irresponsibly, if you do have a little bit of money to shell out, I think it's important to note that you do get a large amount of resources from the Battle Pass, which in turn saves you a bunch of trailblaze power. Obviously, this is extremely valuable if you want to progress faster, and is very valuable at our current stage in the game due to how scarce the resources actually are. At the time of writing this, I was able to get 4 stars in the Memory of Chaos. I honestly don't think I would have been able to do this if it weren't for the extra credits and materials that you can get from the Battle Pass. In any case, that just about sums up this video, and if you found this video useful, please drop a like as it really does help the channel. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.